So Hivemapper is building the world's freshest map using a decentralized community of contributors all around the world. And the way that they do that is, there's a few different ways that you can contribute to building this map. One is you can put a dash cam in your car and collect fresh street level imagery, which is kind of the raw materials of a map. You can also be an AI trainer where you help to train AI models to extract intelligence about the world by doing little tasks to say, oh yeah, this is a 65-mile-per-hour speed limit sign. The AI was right. And ultimately, over time, we're going to be building more and more and more data products and layers to ladder up to the kind of full-featured map that you would expect from the likes of a Google.
Welcome to Trailblazers. Today I'm here with Gabe from Hivemapper. Gabe, why don't we start off by you talking a little bit about your story and kind of how you got to Hivemapper?
Yeah, so I've been at Hivemapper for about a year and a half since the launch of the network in late 2022. And before that, I had spent several years working at Lyft, building a new business line there. Before that, I'd been a journalist covering transportation technology. So I've been passionate about transportation innovation for a very long time. And when I learned about the vision of Hivemapper and the opportunity to build better, fresher maps in a crowdsourced way, I was really excited about that. I've always loved maps. I knew from my time at Lyft and from my time as a journalist some of the pain in the mapping industry today, the consolidation of the industry, the lack of good options for developers. And so I really understood the business need for this kind of solution. And to be honest, I didn't have a crypto or Web3 background. This wasn't something that I had been thinking about as a trajectory in my career. Ariel, the co-founder and CEO, showed me how this was an opportunity to use the power of crypto incentives to achieve something that wouldn't have been possible otherwise, something that would align the incentives of a community in a way that no other reward mechanism could, that could allow the rapid growth to global scale to build something incredibly valuable for all kinds of applications around the world. Because I think the thing that's important to remember is, even if you don't open Google Maps or Apple Maps or Waze or some navigation app, you're using maps in almost every single product you touch, whether it's an Uber ride or renting an Airbnb. They're all reliant on these enterprise mapping solutions under the hood. And that's an industry that's frankly pretty broken right now. And we see an opportunity to do things in a better way, a fairer way, a way that fairly rewards and recognizes all the people who make that map possible. I think there's other kind of open sourcey projects out there that are focused on mapping. There are other crowdsourced projects, but and even some of the big tech companies have relied on members of their community to do their map editing. But typically, all that value has accrued to really wealthy corporations that have been building using those maps, and rather than kind of allowing the entire community to benefit from the fruits of what they've built. So really powerful vision. And as a transportation nerd, it was really exciting for me to work on this and leave a mark on the future of how people get around.
Awesome. Yeah. So for those of the audience that are not quite familiar about how Hivemapper works, can you kind of give a large picture overview?
Yeah. So Hivemapper is building the world's freshest map using a decentralized community of contributors all around the world. And the way that they do that is, there's a few different ways that you can contribute to building this map. One is you can put a dash cam in your car and collect fresh street level imagery, which is kind of the raw materials of a map. If you think about those Google Street View cars that you see driving around the world to build their Google Street View product, they're not just there to build Google Street View. They're also getting the ground truth on the state of the world to build maps. What does this intersection have a stop sign or a traffic light? What's the speed limit here? That's the reality of this situation. And so contributing with a dash cam is one good way to do that. You can also be an AI trainer where you help to train AI models to extract intelligence about the world by doing little tasks to say, oh yeah, this is a 65-mile-per-hour speed limit sign. The AI was right. This is a school zone. It only applies during these hours. Here's the precise location of this, to help train the AI to get better and better at automatically extracting that intelligence about the world and positioning objects in physical space. Those are the main two ways that people can contribute. Of course, you can build with this data as well. We have what we call the map data console. Anybody can go in, put in a credit card, buy some credits, and start consuming this map data through APIs to build products today. So lots of ways to interact with the project. And And ultimately, over time, we're going to be building more and more and more data products and layers to ladder up to the kind of full-featured map that you would expect from the likes of a Google. Today, there's a few products. There's images. There's map features extracted from the map. There's a location monitoring tool called Scout, and you can expect more and more of those tools to be built over time because the scalability of the map data collection just allows an endless number of applications. We've already mapped 20% of the world's roads in the first 18 months. The trajectory is incredible.
Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, like Google Maps right now controls like a very large portion of the map market. How would you kind of contrast the map data you guys kind of collect, and like what advantages does it have over the kind of data that Google Maps may collect, and why would somebody want to use it for that reason?
Yeah. So if you think about we're very focused on the enterprise map data market today. Over time, someday maybe we'll get into consumer applications, but right now, very focused on enterprise B2B. And if you're an enterprise B2B customer, so a logistics company, an automotive company, a big app developer, I mentioned like an Uber or an Airbnb. There's really only a couple options that you have that will give you global scale today. And one is to go to the Google suite of APIs. And one is to go to the OpenStreetMap ecosystem, and they have a bunch of developers building on them, Mapbox and so on, who allow you to tap into that open source ecosystem. And Google is incredibly high quality. They collect all their own data. They have a full suite of APIs that are really great, but they're also incredibly expensive. They increased their prices by I can't remember the exact number, but like thousands of percent in 2018. And it was this wake up call for the entire tech industry that you can't rely on this company. They have you over a barrel for maps, which are a core component of your map. And if you look at how all the big tech companies have reacted, many of them have built their own mapping teams about things that are not really that core to their product. Almost every big tech company has a mapping team at this point, which is, you think if you had a healthy ecosystem with lots of options to choose between, that probably wouldn't be happening. And so, if you need the absolute highest quality and you're willing to pay a high price for it, and maybe your volume isn't too extreme, maybe you could still rely on Google. But a lot of these companies have had to rely on collecting their own map data themselves. And you can go to the OpenStreetMap ecosystem, which is an incredible feat by this crowdsourced community, basically the Wikipedia of maps. But they don't have the consistency or the level of coverage that a Google has, and so you're making trade-offs and quality trade-offs that you might not be willing to compromise with. And so many of the customers who have been the perfect fit for Hivemapper in these early days are some of these large map developers and other B2B, large tech companies that are building using maps, because they say, I have either my own internal map data set that I've collected myself or that I've pieced together from various sources, but I really need to keep it fresh, right? Old map data gets stale. It's no longer as useful as it was, and you need new data sources to keep it fresh. And Hivemapper has the freshest eyes on many of the roads around the world. With Google Street View images being a couple years old, you can't necessarily rely on it for a lot of applications.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So with like all these drivers kind of going around and picking data, like how do you guys, like, I guess what insights have you got about like kind of incentivizing activity with tokens that maybe wasn't very obvious when you guys first started this project?
Yeah, well, I think incentives are just incredibly powerful. I mean, we all know this, and there are good things about that, and there are bad things about that. I think the good thing about it is that it really helped to create this incredibly passionate, engaged, productive community of people who are highly motivated in order to earn tokens, right? And that has led to a more rapid growth than I think we've ever seen from any crowdsourced mapping project before. Our scale of growth is about 4x faster than Google Street View was in its early days. There's really no project that's been able to map it. And when we say mapping, we don't mean just like I drove through this area and maybe I got a couple data points. I mean like full high quality imagery and metadata associated with that imagery. So it's like very large scale collection, and that's incredibly powerful. But you also see a lot of perverse incentives. You have to hold people incredibly accountable toward high quality, toward mounting their dash cam correctly. We've been on a real campaign the last couple months to up level the quality of our dash cam mounts. I think the great thing is that because people always, some people are just motivated, they really care about the map. Some people, they always have known, if I don't mount this thing properly, there's a risk I'll lose my tokens, and so they were incentivized to do the right thing. And so as a baseline, like more than 90% of people had a great mount already. There wasn't really a issue with them. But there was still that 10% who were being very lackadaisical about it, because as long as they were getting tokens, they didn't really care about the quality of what they were sending into the mapping network. And so we've strengthened our mount rating, is what it's called, that relies on a combination of like automated and human QA to assess the quality of everybody's mounts. And if you don't have a good mount, you don't get rewards. Like if you have a really bad mount, you get no rewards at all. And if you have a pretty mediocre mount, you're going to get a lot less. That's going to be redistributed to the people who do the right thing and mount their dash cams well. I think that's an incredibly important thing. And I think, a lot of Web3 projects have to be very rightly concerned about civil protection and avoiding bots. And I think the same is very true with a DPIN project. If you leave any window for people to spam contributions, to duplicate contributions, to fake contributions, people are going to seize on that. And if you actually care about generating a good product, a valuable product for end customers, that's a disaster. You can't have poor quality data making it onto your network. And you also can't be bleeding tokens to people who are submitting poor quality contributions. I think this is one area where, we've learned a lot of lessons about how to improve things over the course of the past year and a half, but I think we designed the system, fortunately, very well to protect against this. So for instance, we have a mechanism called Freshness. You get more rewards if a road hasn't been driven in a while. And what this means is if you try to stick 10 dash cams in a car, one of those dash cams is going to get rewarded and the other 9 are not. And so we've seen a lot of people over the last year and a half stick a whole bunch of dash cams in their car thinking, oh, I'm going to get 10 times the rewards because I've mapped the same road 10 times. Well, that's not valuable to the map. And so you're not going to get rewards for it. And so we see this periodically pop up. Someone tries it thinking that they're so clever, and then the system does its job and prevents them from getting those extra rewards, and they give up after a week or two. So it's really important to have those mechanisms built in. I'm not going to say we got everything right. We've had to make a lot of improvements over the past year and a half in how we check the quality of the contributions. But that's just my advice to any other DPIN builder: is you have to have thought through the eyes of a scammer, how would you try and exploit this network to maximize your own personal rewards?
Yeah, it's really funny to see the creative lengths people will go to try to get different tokens. I was just looking on your Twitter, and you kind of put something up showing that people were manipulating the maps on Pokemon Go to get something like Pokemon that's not even like monetary, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, this is actually a funny thing we were just talking about in the office yesterday. Crypto creates these kinds of incentives for people to try and exploit the system for their own gain. But you have people who have those kinds of incentives for non-financial, non-crypto reasons across any kind of crowdsourced project that allows people to participate, in a permissionless way. I think what this example with Pokemon Go was great. Pokemon Go was built using OpenStreetMap, and there was a certain Pokemon that would only show up. It was rare. It would only show up in a beach area. So people were going in and editing the underlying map because it's open source. It's like it's like the Wikipedia of maps. They were going and putting beaches in places there weren't beaches. And so all the good editors had to go and clean up all this mess that these bad actors had created in order just to try and get a digital Pokemon. It didn't have any value, but it was something that they wanted for other reasons. And so they had the incentive to do so. And actually, we also saw just in the last couple of days, as a result of the Drake-Kendrick Lamar beef, people were going into Google Maps and editing their houses to add like insults related to this beef. So, people have all kinds of motivations and incentives in their own lives. Some of them are more financial, some of them are not. And, if you are building any kind of crowdsourced project where, when DPIN typically falls into that category, you have to just be laser focused on like, what are the attack vectors that somebody who has the wrong incentives might follow in order to achieve their ends, and how do you mitigate that harm to your project?
Yeah, totally makes sense. So kind of bringing it to like kind of the crypto ecosystem, how do you feel that decentralized finance and like kind of other like elements of infrastructure in the crypto ecosystem kind of helps bolster like your project, even though it's not directly related, having like good liquidity indexes and maybe having your token be able to be collateral? Like, how do you guys think about that stuff impacting your project?
We don't really get too involved in that or think about it too much. It's sort of, once people hold the tokens, they're free to do with it whatever they like. They're free to hold them, to transact them. It's theirs, and they kind of, it's interesting to see all the ways that that kind of the ecosystem develops around this token once it's out there in the world. And I think ultimately all of those tools, the reason we try not to get too involved in them or think about them too much is they're incidental to the work that we are doing of building a useful map. The only thing that causes any value to accrue to this project over time is building useful tools and products that make mapping better. The tokenomics are set up in that way so that, especially with a more recent MIP that went through, when map data gets consumed, it causes token burn, which should help the token. I think that's the only thing that adds value, and so we try not to kind of think about, touch any of the kind of financial engineering aspects of things. That all that will come on its own organically through the decisions of individual people and organizations if this is a project with real value. And the only thing we can control is making it a project that has real value.
Yeah, well, it's awesome to be laser focused on the mission there.
Yeah.
In terms of regulatory kind of things, have you guys faced any challenges in the regulatory front when it comes to kind of collecting this sort of data?
I think the main thing that we think about day to day is data protection and privacy. That's really, really important whenever you're mapping. Mapping is an incredibly useful and important activity for humanity. It helps all of us get around every day. But it also comes with risk whenever you're just collecting lots of information about the world, running the risk of capturing, people, their vehicles, and they have a right to know if that's happening. They have a right to prevent anything personal from making it onto the network. And so we've been very proactive about building tools into our product that live up to the highest standards of data protection and privacy. So, for instance, we're in a way that I'm not sure that I don't think there's any other kind of dashcam mapping project that's doing this. We are doing edge processing to automatically blur all of the imagery on the cam before it even comes to the app, before it comes to the network, to blur entire bodies and vehicles to mitigate that risk of any kind of personal information making it on. In addition to that, we allow people to set personal privacy zones of I don't want to map this area. This is my house. This is my workplace. We have a pretty robust data redaction process where people can request something to be taken down. And we've been proactively engaging with regulators in some of the most important jurisdictions around the world that have the strongest laws around data protection and privacy in order to make sure that we're doing things in the best way we possibly can. So I think that's the kind of the regulatory area that we've been most focused on. That's very unique to mapping, very important to mapping. Different countries have different laws around map data collection. We have to be cautious about how we operate and where. But I think data protection and privacy is the thing that's going to define kind of regulatory engagement for this project for years to come. If you go and you look back at the early days of Google Street View, for instance, this was a new thing that hadn't existed in the world before. Mapmaking had never been digitalized like this before, and it created a whole set of new guidance and rules from different agencies around the world. And so we've studied those things very carefully and taken those into account in how we design our product. And inevitably, I'm sure this project will raise new ones. And the important thing is for us to be engaged with those authorities early, proactively, and thinking through how we can kind of productize solutions that will achieve the upside of this project in terms of making better, fresher maps for humanity while mitigating the risks. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's good to know. So on the front of I guess feedback from your community, other than kind of changing your incentives to kind of make sure malicious actors aren't taking tokens from your supply, how have you guys, either people who have consumed the data or drivers, how have you taken that feedback and kind of changed how you've either map the data, run incentives, or building out the product?
Yeah, well, I think for anybody who's been around with the project for a year and a half, they've seen a lot of changes in how just the app and the dashcam work. It's become much, much more passive, much easier to do, much more successful, more productive as a result of a lot of feedback from the community. And so we've always listened very closely to kind of what is causing pain points in the process of mapping, and we're very proud of the changes we've made to make it easier and easier. It's still not easy enough, and we think the next generation B dashcam is really designed based on all of the feedback that we've received over the past 2 years from individual contributors, from fleet managers who are more entrepreneurial, from commercial fleets. We've been listening, we've been developing, and we think this is going to take things to the next level for people. I think from the customer point of view, the thing that I think some people who are kind of closely following DeepIn projects may not really see or quite get is how focused we are on the demand side of this project. I think it's really cool to see the explosion of projects in what's now called the DeepIn space, of people trying to build, bootstrap some data resource, some computing resource, some mapping resource, but it's all just speculative unless you are building a product that's really useful to a real customer. And so, we've gone through many data validations with some of the world's largest mapping companies over the past couple years, and shaped a lot of things based on their feedback, including the B dash cam, including the specifications of how we collect data and upload it to the network. I think some of the examples there are around the GNSS quality, the positional accuracy is really important to those customers, and so that's something that's been a big focus. And you'll see that with the next generation B dash cam having better hardware than ever before. So we're laser focused on what customers tell us they need from this network. That's the only thing that's going to make it kind of successful and accruing value over the long run.
Yeah. So compared to Google Maps or something, where do you see kind of the way you guys collect data has very visible advantages in the things that these people consuming the data want?
Yeah, I think the killer thing that we have is freshness. Their approach is incredibly high quality, but it's also incredibly expensive. You have a dedicated vehicle with a driver you're paying to drive around, with tens of thousands of sensors on top. You're only going to be able to map roads every couple years in most places, and maybe a couple times a year in the places that you deem most valuable, big cities in the US and Europe, for instance, right? And so freshness is really the killer app for us. We are going to be able to beat them on that dimension, even if we give up some on some of the incredibly high quality that you get from having tens of thousands of dollars of sensors on the car. Also, we haven't designed this thing to be a consumer friendly, consumer facing mapping product. This isn't this beautiful, glamorous 360 view that you can pan around the world. No, this is like a B2B enterprise product. It's incredibly functional. It's high quality imagery that's well positioned, that's collected at a low cost, so that you have better freshness than you can get in any other way. And there's a lot of projects, and there's a lot of companies, big companies, that have found that they have a need for this kind of data, and so they've built their own smartphone apps to collect imagery. They've put dash cams in their car and integrated with them. And I think where we take pride is in the high quality and in the consistency of our map data. A lot of the companies that have tried to build their own smartphone apps have ultimately given up those efforts. We're talking some of the world's largest tech companies have given up those efforts because the consistency across different dash cam models has made it really hard to use it for any kind of computer vision application, because they overheat on the dashboard on a sunny day. And so we're very proud of the consistency and high quality that our platform generates compared to the other options that those customers would have for a high frequency, highly fresh map data solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you guys think that at a point, if you guys manage to kind of get control over the high freshness part of the market, you'd maybe offer higher quality hardware to the drivers to kind of get the more 360 sort of thing?
Yeah, I don't think we know exactly what the future holds. I could definitely imagine that being something that we move into over time. I could imagine us moving into higher quality. I could imagine us moving into different form factors, because there's places in the world where cars aren't the best collection mechanism. Especially in Southeast Asia, for instance, there's a lot more mopeds and bikes on the road than there are cars, and some of the roads can't be accessed by cars. And so how do you make sure that you're covering as many places as possible? I think another area that we're starting to work more and more on is direct vehicle integration. Most of the sensors that we have in our dash cams are essentially the same type of hardware that a driver assistance system in a modern car would have. Those like stereo cameras behind the windshield that's powering like an autopilot type product. And so, is there an opportunity to directly integrate and to generate this data in the most scalable way possible? There's a lot of possibilities, but right now, there's enough headroom to grow and improve with the dashcam platform. That's where our focus is. Our focus is on getting the beat out, making it as good as possible, and scaling through that platform.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. What's kind of on the horizon for you guys? Like, what are you guys excited for at Hivemapper, like currently, and like what's coming up?
Yeah, well, I think the launch of the B is hugely important. We've got at this point more than 30,000 dash cams on back order, which is a real challenging situation to be in. We're honored and very happy by kind of the wave of interest in the project that took off at the end of last year. We didn't see this coming. We didn't have the parts. We didn't have the production capacity, but we saw the interest and we wanted to like let people hold their place in line. We took orders and, we're burning through that backlog as fast as we possibly can. But so, what that means is that we owe it to those people to get them a great dash cam as quickly as we possibly can. So that's like the top priority for the team, is making sure that we run the B launch as best we possibly can. The other thing that we're investing a lot in right now, besides kind of customer validations, is enhancing our map AI pipeline. One thing that I think a lot of people don't realize who think of us as like a dashcam project is, we have a bunch of contributors with dashcams who are collecting imagery. We also have tens of thousands of weekly active AI trainers who are going in and micro-tasking to help perform tasks to edit the map data and to improve the AI models. And that is an incredibly powerful tool for building maps. Most of the big map companies are relying on kind of like teams of people in a BPO, like an outsourcing type environment, and that's one way that you can do it. And having it be decentralized, so people can kind of like do 15 minutes of tasks on the bus, is another. And so we're focused on scaling up that platform while improving the quality of it as well. So I think those are the main things that are top of mind. But I think what we're excited to share more details on in the coming months, as we get permission to do so, is some of the customer wins that we've had. We have, I believe as of right now, we have like 2 of the world's top 10 global map makers using our data. We're in talks with more, and we're talking about the logo rights to be able to share those names and some of those details, and we're excited to announce more of that in the months to come.
That's awesome. I think this is a really good way to wrap things up. Thank you for coming on and sharing your perspective.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Jack.
Yeah, of course.